live. Then sometimes it takes a second.
It says it's on.
It does? Okay, cool. Let's see. Oh, cool. I had some people respond to the question as well, so we can look at those comments as well. Okay, we're live. Hello, everybody. I'm just making sure I have it on my phone so I can see your comments. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever in the world you are right now. If you're popping on, please say hello. Facebook sometimes shows me who pops on, but not always. And so I definitely see the comments. So as you're popping on, say hello. If you're catching the replay, comment a hashtag replay. As the description of this video says, this is the Self-Love in Quarantine conversation series continued. And today we're going to be talking about how to deal with all the feels during quarantine, and also how to heal and move through your grief. And for that, I'm so excited to have this amazing, lovely woman with me. Her name is Jocelyn Jackson-Williams. Hold on, I have your bio here, well, a brief bio. So Jocelyn is a certified advanced grief recovery method specialist and a trainer for the Grief Recovery Institute. And she helps people recover a sense of happiness in their life and helps them move through grief. And of course, she has a couple of other things going on, and we'll talk about that through the conversation. But just to let you all know why I felt she was the perfect guest for this conversation. And we actually met because, as a lot of you know, I lost my mother and my nephew back to back, and it was a really big blow to our family. And through that, I found this book called The Grief Recovery Handbook, which I will paste a link in the comments because we'll probably be talking about it or referring to it a lot. So I bought this book and I went through, my dad's here. Hey, Dad. Hey, Chelsea. Hey, Felix. And Shamik are here. Yay, we got all these people on. I'm pinning the comment. I'm pinning the link to the book. So I read the book and I went through the process several times, and it really just transformed my understanding of grief, my understanding of life, my understanding of humans, emotions, and all of that. And it really transformed my life and helped me heal and get to this really deep level of self-love and healing around, you know, the shittier parts of life. And when I launched my podcast, I definitely knew I wanted to have an episode about grief. And I was looking through the Grief Recovery Institute, and I found Jocelyn's beautiful picture and her bio. And my intuition was just like, she's the one I want to interview. And I reached out, and I'm so grateful, Jocelyn, that you reached out to me. Like, you reached back out to me like right away, and we just hopped on it. And we had an amazing, beautiful podcast episode that so many of my listeners, like, they send me messages still. Like, we did that back in November, and I still get messages about how that episode was a game changer and so healing. And I'm so grateful that you were a yes to that and that you're a yes today. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And, you know, just, I don't know if you know, I didn't even get the message immediately. It went to the Institute, and Brittany got it and sent it to me. So like it went through a few hands before it got to me. And I still got back to you, you know, immediately, because I was just excited. I love having these conversations. And so anytime somebody is excited to talk to me, and then on top of it, you're just fabulous. So it's like a double.
Thank you so much. And it's funny because, like, we're saying, like, we're excited to talk about grief, and it's like, how does that work? Because I think when I say the word grief a lot, people kind of do that, like, or like, it's just a really uncomfortable thing. We don't know how to deal with it. But I think, at least I can speak for myself, I'm excited because I know the power of when we deal with grief properly and truly heal and recover. Oh my gosh, it increases our capacity for love and intimacy and happiness and compassion and joy. And I think, and I know how much grief recovery has helped both of our lives. And that's probably why, like, I know we're smiling talking about grief, but I think also we just really enjoy each other.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
we know, we know,
that's
yeah.
I was gonna say that's a really good point. I'm glad you said that. And you mentioned like, because sometimes I don't think about how somebody else could be perceiving, like, why are you smiling? Why are you saying you're excited? Because, it's not just grief, it's grief recovery. And we say in trainings all the time, like, so this is grief recovery, and the emphasis is on recovery. So the excitement part is really in knowing that there's a way out from whatever you're feeling right now. And then when somebody is excited to come here, or just interested, I should say, to come and learn something about, like, is it possible for me to feel happy again? That's the excitement that I have, that I know it is possible.
It is
Yeah.
possible. It really, really is. And before we really go into like the details about grief recovery and all of that, first we need to baseline, like define what grief is, and also talk about the common misconceptions around grief, because now that I'm like a self-proclaimed grief expert, because I've read the book so many times and I have a podcast episode about it, so obviously I'm an expert. I'm saying that in a cheeky way, but like I find I use the word grief much more easily because I understand what it is, how it affects me, and I also understand the recovery that's possible. But I find when I use that word, like, oh, you're grieving, or oh, this, it's like people are like, no, 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 no. So let's just like, everyone's probably going to come with their own filters and perceptions about what grief is, but let's just talk a little bit about what is grief, and then also like what are a lot of the common misconceptions that people have about it. So first, what is grief? And you said a wonderful definition on our podcast episode, but in this moment, what is grief, like in a way that can help people understand?
Yeah, I have a few working definitions, so I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but I'll mention a couple that I feel like are appropriate now. Like the first one we tend to always say is that it's a normal and natural process to loss. And that's important to understand, because like when you're grieving, nothing about it feels normal or natural. And sometimes people think there's something wrong with me. And so they don't even realize that what's going on with them is a normal and natural process that's a reaction to some sort of loss that you've had. And actually, I just like to call it loss and grief when I'm talking to people. I like them to hear the word loss, because people can understand that they've had a loss before a lot of people understand that they're grieving, because people think grief is just death and divorce, and that's
And
it.
they also think grief is like, oh, like that it looks a certain way too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And it doesn't look any particular way. It's different for every single person. It's a very unique experience. So even two people who have like the same quote unquote losses, like we've both lost
Same
our
person,
mothers. It's
right?
just, it's still, I can't tell you, I know how you feel. I don't know how you feel. At
Yeah,
best, I know how I felt when I lost my mom, and we have a quote unquote shared experience, but what all the things that led up to us in our lives, completely different. So every griever is a different experience. And then just, yeah, you're so right about it doesn't have to look a particular way. If somebody understands that whatever loss that they've had, and this is the second definition that I would say, is that it's a change or an end in a familiar pattern of behavior. And that's
that's the
important to
one that you said on
understand.
the episode.
I was thinking in my head, I was like, I think
That's
this
my
is the way.
no, that's my
So
favorite. Yeah,
yeah. But it's really important for people to understand that, because people will disqualify themselves again, thinking they're not grieving, when they don't understand, hey, anything that you've been used to that is suddenly changed, that is grief. And that could
yes.
be positive or negative, like things that we think that are great things. Getting a promotion, everybody thinks, oh, you're making more money. Oh, now you're the
You must
boss.
feel great.
Yeah.
You don't know
But
what
if
I feel. Yeah.
and if that, like, but if that's changed every working relationship you had, if the
Yes.
people, your coworkers who were your friends, who would invited you to happy hour, all of a sudden don't do that anymore, and now they're off to themselves and you're by yourself, yep, there's grief with that. So
Yeah.
there can be ups and downs with grief. We can look at one thing, and I think, we're so conditioned in society to only think about the positive things and think about the things that are great. So you can talk about getting the promotion and a raise and all that great stuff, but you can't talk about the feelings that you have of missing your friends,
Yeah,
so.
like your old coworkers or even your old cubicle or
Mhm.
whatever, right? So I just
Yeah.
want to pull out, because I love those two definitions. So I'm going to add that other one to my favorite definitions because so I love that it's a normal and natural, did you say response or process? Either
Reaction. I think it's a reaction to your loss.
reaction. So first I want to like harp on that one, normal and natural reaction, right? I was actually talking with a friend the other day and ever since like, and I also had two family members pass away last week. And so for me, I don't know, I'm just a very cheeky person. So like I say really cheeky things about death now. And I don't know, I know that it makes some people uncomfortable. So I don't do it willy-nilly, but like with my friends, I'll be like, yep, my dead mom or something. And then, so I was basically talking about like that to my friend. And then I was like, hey, like, you know what, I'm sorry, like if this like rubs you the wrong way, but this is just how I talk about death now and sometimes. And that person basically responded and said, I don't deal with death well. And I immediately asked, how do you deal with it? Like what does not well mean?
Yeah.
And then they were like, well, I have sadness. And I was just like, sadness is hella normal, and I wasn't saying it like in that way. Of course, like when I was talking to this person, I was compassionate, but like I'm saying it in a cheeky way now just for illustrative purposes. But like, oh, I feel sad. And I'm like, feeling sad as a response to death, normal. I don't see how that's not dealing with it well. And then they were like, well, I get overwhelmed with emotion. And then I was like, also normal. And I think to what you're saying, our society, we focus on only the positives. And so overwhelmed with emotion becomes this not normal, bad thing, but it's like totally normal, right?
Yeah. And we're trained from childhood to only talk about the happy things. Like if you notice, you maybe in your own childhood or listening to an adult talk to a child, if a child expresses any sort of sadness, they're quickly being redirected to something happy and shiny and bright. And so you can't think about the sad stuff. And so we do that so much as children when we grow up. Now we have the idea that we can't have a feeling, like if we feel something that's sad or anything in like what we would consider a negative range, then there's something bad. There's something bad about it and there's something wrong. So, I mean, for her to say she doesn't handle it well is to say, oh, I have feelings of sadness. And so there must be something wrong with that. And that's why that's the first definition, because like what you're saying is wrong is normal. And let me tell you something, I went through the same thing when my mom died. I felt like this is well before I'd done any recovery work. I was like, there is something wrong with me. I started calling psychiatrists. I wanted somebody to certify me as crazy because what I felt like my emotions were up and down. It was too much. And I talked to somebody at church. I talked to a pastor. He's like, no, this is normal. And then I called a psychiatrist and she was trying to convince me that it was normal too. And I like got in a fight with her. I'm like, this is not normal. And she said, well, why don't you said you go to church. Why don't you talk to your pastors and see what they say? It's like, I already talked to them and they said I'm normal too.
Call me crazy, please.
Somebody needs to call me crazy because that's what it feels like.
Yeah, no, it, but here's the thing, I think in our society, it's like the only thing that's normalized is like toxic positivity, or whatever. Like let me not say the only thing. I think what we're talking about is an invitation to anyone watching to just be aware of like what you consider normal and not normal. And just question that, because to me, feeling overwhelmed or overcome with emotions of sadness as a response to death is like if normal was the definition, like a normal response, like that would be the textbook definition, right? And so we're starting to talk about common misconceptions around grief and the responses. So let's name some more. So one is that feelings are not normal, right? What else are like some common misconceptions that we have?
I think I just briefly touched on this too. It's just the idea that if you have any feelings of sadness, you must quickly replace them with the bright, shiny, happy thoughts.
Something.
And that's
like don't cry.
Yeah. That's the
Right.
right way to handle it. You don't just think about something happy. Just switch your mind to something else, as if what you're feeling will magically disappear if you don't think about it. So I think that's important for people to understand, is you can pretend that you don't have the feelings you have, but they live inside of you. And I think we did talk about this a little bit before, is that I tell people you have to imagine those emotions inside of you actually occupying real estate inside of your body. So even if you pretend that they don't exist, they do, and they're living inside of you. And if you don't address them, your body will end up paying the price for that. So
Physically as well. Yeah.
mhm, yeah,
And I think I love the analogy in the book, the Grief Recovery Handbook, where it's like, you know, if you break your arm, someone's not like, oh, just think about your other arm. They're like, no, like you better do something about that.
mhm,
You better go to the hospital. You better get the bone like placed back in by a professional and have a cast
mhm,
and a sling for weeks, you know. So I think with physical ailments, we understand that things have to
yep,
be dealt with. But I think
mhm.
with emotional ailments, if you will, we think we can just ignore it, which
Yeah, or
is
just give, some sort of like spiritual assent to it that somehow makes it go away. Like another example I like is, like, let's imagine you got hit by a car, and then and so you're sitting there bleeding, waiting for the ambulance to come to help you, and somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh, well, don't worry, because in heaven there'll be no more pain." It's like, what?
that illustrates it so perfectly. And you know, on it, that was also another response that I had. You know, my cousin, I think I told you this, my cousin passed away last week. And you know, here's the thing, no, just to say I'm grateful for all of the messages. I'm
Hmm.
so grateful. And I'm also so aware at how some of them are just misguided, or because we don't have the education on this. And that's why I want to talk about this, to educate people, right? And so here's the thing too, I'm a very metaphysical, like spiritual woo-woo person. And I do believe that people never die, and your energy is never gone. And when my mom died, I like, even to this day, I feel so spiritually connected to her. So even from someone like me who does have that belief system, I had a text from a friend that was like, I know that you're assured knowing that his spirit lives on. And in that, like, I believe that. So
Hmm.
like, here's the thing, number one, not everyone will believe that, so like, don't project that onto them.
Right.
But even as someone who believes that, I was not in the space to hear that in that
Yep.
moment,
Right.
because I
Right.
had just, like you said, gotten emotionally hit by a car and
Hmm.
was emotionally bleeding out on the streets.
Yeah.
And to have someone be like, well, rest assured that he is safe in heaven now, I'm gonna be like, dude, screw you, get me an ambulance, give me some stitches, like
Yeah.
no.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we try to resolve an emotional matter in other means. Like, so intellectually we try to make it go away, or spiritually we try to make
Gotta
it
make it
make
go.
it go away. Like, we can somehow spiritually resolve everything that's happening emotionally. But what happened to you was an emotional event. So you can't just say, oh, well, you can be assured. Actually, the same thing happened to me when my mom died. Somebody said, this is like 3 hours into me finding out that she had died. They're like, well, you can rejoice because your mom's in heaven. And
Like, who's rejoicing right now?
mhm. So even if that's spiritually true, um, she's not here with me on earth. That's what I'm grieving. And that's an emotional issue. And it was an interesting moment, because it was a bunch of church friends around me. And I'm like, oh, I'm about to sound like a heathen, but I'm gonna just tell the truth about myself. And I'm like, no, that doesn't help me at all.
Yeah.
And thankfully everybody in the room was like, yeah, because it was just like a silence in the room. So
Well, that's like saying, like you said, if someone gets hit by a car bleeding out on the street, well, rejoice in knowing that there's a hospital nearby. It's like, who is rejoicing right now? Like, this
mhm,
is not, you know, and
yeah,
even if it's spiritually true, but also it might not be spiritually true for that person either.
mhm,
So it's like
yeah,
everyone has these different perspectives. So,
yeah.
yeah,
One of the things I've learned is, when they don't know what to say, they choose to say whatever comes to their mind, or they choose to say whatever they've learned from their friends and family, not even knowing if it's helpful, but it's the quote unquote wisdom that everybody says. But
yes,
nobody's comfortable with just zipping it. Like nobody's comfortable with just being quiet because
just being with the feelings. Yeah.
Mhm. When the truth is, like, there are no magic words that are going to take away somebody's pain.
Yeah.
Um, I know, when I was in LA and working for my church, even when somebody would die, a lot of times people would like push me in front of them. And I'm like, I don't have the
Yeah. The
right word.
magic words.
There's
Yeah.
no magic words I can say for this person either. At best, I know what not to say, but there's nothing I can say to have this person to take away this person's pain. That's going to be their own process,
Yeah.
should they choose to go through it.
I just want to respond to, so yeah, I think, and at best too, we can just at least hold space and just say like,
The
I'm
power of
here.
presence is it's very important. I
Yeah.
remember my best friend came to see me when after my mom died, and she told me like on day 2 or 3, she's like, I'm not helping you. And I told her, you being here is helpful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It so is like, and honestly too, I discovered a new thing that's really helpful for me. And it's, well, it's not a new thing, but with after my cousin passed, my friend started sending me all these like really cute animals like hugging, because with social distancing I can't hug
Mhm.
anyone. And he was like, I want to give you a hug right now. And I was like, well, I guess gifts will have to do. And he started sending me these really cute like animals hugging, and like I was just crying. And I didn't know that that was the perfect answer, and I just wanted to address a couple of comments on here. One of them I think leads to another misconception, but then there's also a question of, well, what is the best thing to say?
Mhm.
Suggestions on what is the best thing to say.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear what you have to say too, Jocelyn. But I think, for like we just said it, like it's better to even say nothing and at least hold space,
Mhm.
and to even say, I don't know what to say, but
Yep.
I know I want to be here for you.
Mhm.
And I'm just gonna sit here, and you don't have to do anything. Like you just need to oh my, like, oh,
You,
how good would that be? That's
yeah.
so good.
That's what you just said is probably the best one, because we don't know. Like if that's get
I'm
it,
an
girl.
expert.
You're just
Yeah, because we
expanding.
don't know what to
But
say.
it's true. And it's, what, like when you think about it, for the griever, when somebody says to them, I don't know what to say to you, um there's something genuine about that rings true to them, because they know that nobody understands what they're feeling right now. So it's really getting out of this mentality of, I'm going to find the right words to say to fix all this, because you're not going to fix it. And it's actually not something that needs to be fixed in this moment. You just need to be available to that person as they're enduring this.
Yeah.
So that, I think that's the key one. But then also I think anything that you're feeling is kind of fair to say, like, oh, my heart is breaking for you, like whatever is true.
Yeah.
I just want to give you a hug. Would you like a hug? Whatever, those sort of thoughts, those non-fixing thoughts, those I'm here with you and here's what I'm feeling thoughts, those are the ones you want to share.
And I love the piece about, I want to give you a hug. Would you like one? Right? Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people will just grab you.
Mm-hmm.
And that might not always be right. I mean, that could be right, but it could not be. And so it's like, I love when people say, would you like one? Because it also, sometimes I don't know that I would like one in the moment until I'm asked and like the arms are open, and then I'll just like fall into the arms. And I do want to shout out the woman who did ask Kiki about suggestions on what's the best thing to say. I actually want to shout you out, because if you were there when my mother just passed away, and we were in a different situation, like a working situation. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was the leader of that group, and she was basically like, so how are you? And I'm like, oh, we're good, like we're on time and stuff. And she was like, no, how are you?
Yeah.
And I just, oh, I miss my mom. I'm like, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just, but I'm so happy to be here, and I'm glad to have, so also that, like, how
Mm-hmm.
are you? Or asking a question like, what do you need? And even like, what do you need? And also, it's okay if you don't know. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
here for
Yeah.
when you figure it out. I'll be
Mm-hmm.
here. I'll be within earshot. If you need a cup of tea, you need a hug, you need me to just sit here and say nothing, you need me to
Yeah.
stop talking, you know?
That's
So I
wonderful.
actually do want to shout you out, Kiki. Like, I know you're asking the question, but you did a beautiful thing for me
Thank you,
in
Kiki.
that moment. Yeah. The other thing that she said was a comment that I think leads to another misconception. I think people get that sadness in response to death is normal, but I think we reserve our sadness for privacy, such as not crying at work or only in
Mhm.
privacy. And I know
Yeah.
that that's one of the myths in the book as well about how we must grieve in solitude. So, do you have anything to say about that, Jocelyn?
Yeah, the grieving alone, the idea if I, and again, I'll say this over and over, it starts in childhood. So, and this one starts in childhood too, where, either, you've been acting up, so you get sent to your room, or, if you have any sort of emotion, you need to go, you need a minute, you need to go be by yourself.
Yeah,
If you grew up in a family that doesn't talk about emotions at all, and
yeah,
children are sent to the other room. So while the adults have their adult conversations, you've been learning since childhood that when
yeah.
you have a feeling, you need to isolate yourself and be
Time
alone.
out.
Hmm. Yeah.
Also, it gets modeled for us, right? So if our
Mhm.
primary caregivers or the grown-ups in our lives, if we notice them only go be alone so they can
Mhm.
cry, like if we've never seen our mother cry, for example, and we notice that she goes off alone, we that's modeled for us, and we like subconsciously take that on as our behavior of like, oh, we're not supposed to like grieve together. But the thing is, millennia ago, and in a lot of like especially indigenous cultures and traditions, grief is about like community and
Community.
healing together and like wailing together and holding each other while you scream and cry and stuff. And that
Mhm.
that privacy, like not crying at work thing, is so real, because I just think society just has it wrong.
Mhm.
I went to this event with Mama Gina. She's what is she created the School of Womanly Arts. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. But my favorite thing in one of her workshops was she was like, imagine if jobs had a feelings room
Mhm.
where, let's say you have a really difficult meeting and you could just go to the feelings room and just like have your feelings.
Yeah.
And like when she said that, the whole, like, this was at the Jacob Javits Center with like 2,500 women, okay? And all of us were just like, oh my God, that would be amazing,
Mhm.
And I work from home, so I actually like, my bed is my feelings room. I'll just go and I'll just have them. I'll just have them. And now that I have the awareness, I'm able to, it's with friends who I trust and feel safe with. I think that's
Mhm.
important, but I'm able to like call up certain friends or be with certain friends and be like, I have a lot of feelings and I just want to feel
Yep.
them, and I want you to be there while I feel them. Will you
Yes.
be there? Will you hold me? And I'm
Mhm.
able, like, and I understand that not everyone has that awareness, but I'm giving that awareness because it's like that might be what you need. And they're so like happy to be there for that, because I'm like, I have these
Mhm.
feelings. I want you to just sit there. I might make a lot of noise, but can you just hold me and play with my hair?
Yeah.
And they're just like, great, like now I know
Yeah.
exactly what to do.
Mhm. You know what's so good about that, Amelia, is that you're teaching them that that's okay for them to do as well. So when they come across something that's hard for them, then they can do that with you, and because they
And they
already
do.
know.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's beautiful. I know. I remember. I'm always remembering one of my best girlfriends. She literally like FaceTimed me, and she was like, "My cat just peed and pooped everywhere, and I might lose my shit. But I just want you to sit there while I talk about it and like vent about it. And I just want you to sit there. And then afterwards, I want you to tell me that I got this and that I'm a badass bitch." And I was like, got it, go. And she just like, this freaking cat, da 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 da. And I was just holding that space, and I was like, just let it all out. Just give it to me, all of it.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you didn't have to fix her. She just needed you
No.
to listen. And that's really, that's what grievers want. They want to be in a space where they know somebody is listening to them. They
Yeah.
can express what they need to do to say without somebody telling them how they should be feeling or what they should be doing. That's really the need of the griever. So for those of us listening, we listen, we take in what they're saying, and that's really the job. It doesn't get any deeper than that. We try to make it
It
like,
really doesn't. And I think actually all those like fixing kind of like rejoice knowing that she's in heaven, and or whatever. That's actually deeper than what we're saying. It's like, it's not that deep, like just be there,
Mhm.
you know
Mhm.
and I think this is a great time to kind of
I want to say one thing more thing about the working.
transitionally about. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to say, if somebody finds themselves in that situation at work,
Oh,
if
yes.
if
Great.
you can just take some breaks, some grief breaks, find what, most offices don't have a feelings
Feelings
room. So you find your
unfortunately.
own feelings room. If it's your car, go there. If it's the bathroom, wherever you need to, and however often you need to take breaks, as many breaks as your job will allow you to without getting yourself into trouble, go ahead and do that, because grievers have such a reduced ability to concentrate. You cannot be grieving and fully functional at work, even if that's the expectation. So if you need to take a minute to get yourself, back into the game.
Well, I always love help, like bringing it back to like a physical analogy. So it's like, if you just broke your arm and you're in a cast, yes, you're not going to be as fully functional at work
Mhm.
if one of your arms doesn't work. So it's the same
Mhm.
with an emotional injury,
Yeah.
right? And with that being said, I like how many breaks you can without getting in trouble. I mean, I think this is also going to be a great exercise to ask for what you need, and depending on your relationship with your boss and your coworkers, and or if you can start to forge a deeper intimate relationship with your boss and coworkers, and have a sit down and say like, look, I'm here, I am fully committed to my job and to doing what I got to do,
Mhm.
and I'm in emotional pain,
Mhm.
so I may need to take, one or two 30-minute breaks throughout the day to like go in my car or whatever and have the feels. And
Mhm.
who, like, honestly, if I was a boss and someone said it to me, I was like, baby girl, have my office. And I'd be like, you know what? We're gonna have a feelings room. Well,
Mhm.
everyone, like, in my office, there will be a feelings room, I'll tell you that. So and it wouldn't be, my kind of office wouldn't be that corporate and hoity-toity. But
Right.
if you are in a corporate hoity-toity office, it might be good to open that dialogue with your coworkers, or have some of your best coworker friends, your work husband, your work wife, whatever, and be like, hey, will you come, like, go grab a pecan bar with me at 3 o'clock and just like sit with me while I eat it, and just,
Mhm.
because like I'm grieving. Because a lot of people too, they ask like, if you need anything, I'm here. And I remember when I first like had my first experience of like that deep grief, and I'm like, and people are like, whatever you need, I'm here. I'm like, I don't even know how to determine what I need or who I like.
Right.
I'm just trying to
Right.
get by, right? And
Mhm.
so through the awareness is how I've developed the languaging of like, can I just lay in your lap and can you stroke my hair for like
Mhm.
5 minutes while I
Yeah.
cry? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Oh, that reminded me of one other thing you were saying earlier too, is like, what do you need? And sometimes grievers don't know. So if you're that person asking, hey, what do you need? And the griever doesn't know, just go for it. Do your best, give them some tea, whatever you think they would want. If they don't use it, then they don't use it. But just go ahead and just present something to them for them to either say, oh, I'm going to use this, or I'm not. Because what
yeah,
you're doing is the best of what you know in the situation, which is, obviously we don't know what might be comforting or not, but just go ahead and take the chance and
yeah,
provide some things, and they can use it or not
yeah.
to their own needs.
Actually, I was hospitalized about a year and a half ago, and I was getting all the what do you need, what do you need, what do you need, and I'm like, dude, I don't know, I'm in the hospital. But one of my girlfriends was like, would you like me? Like, she was like, if you want, I'll come over with some board games, some mani-pedi stuff, and some makeup, and like, I was like, that sounds freaking amazing.
Hmm.
Like, bring the board games and the mani-pedi stuff. Like, but I didn't know, I wouldn't have known to ask for that
Right.
if she didn't
Yeah.
just go for it. Like, if you want, like, I'm sure they don't got nail polish in the hospital, but
Hmm.
I'll come, I'll do your toes. And I'm like, yes, do my toes. Like, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I was just like, yeah, that felt really, really good. And I wouldn't have known to ask for that. So I love
Yeah.
that you're saying, like, just go for, like, offer it. They can say yes or no, or just do it. Like, bring
Mhm.
bring over the meal or whatever.
Yeah.
Or send them a care pack, like with social distancing, send them the care package via
Hmm.
Amazon, and just say, hey, I was thinking of you. I know you've been through a lot. ask them their Venmo and just send them some money. Like just do it. Just offer
Yeah.
it. They can say yes, they can say no.
Mhm.
And so now we're talking kind of about like social distancing and like stuff like that. I want to talk specifically about the grief that I'm going to say we all, because I love your second definition, that grief is the response to any change in a familiar pattern
Mhm.
or behavior. So
Yeah.
that's any change. And like you said, positive or negative. So like even with the promotion, even with getting engaged, getting married, getting in a relationship, getting a new job, moving to a new place, I think we all, yeah, I'm going to say we all, I'm going to go for it. We all, most of us, just focus on like the good part of it, but then we're like silently shaming ourselves and making ourselves not normal for like the bad feelings, right?
Mhm.
um so with that, we're all going through grief because globally we are going through multiple levels of a change in a pattern or behavior.
Mhm.
So what are you seeing, collectively and on an individual level around the different things that we're grieving, and how do we cope? Fix our lives, Jocelyn. Fix our lives. Fix us. No, just kidding. But no, really fix us. Um,
I can veer people in the right direction.
yes,
That's
yes.
that's what I
Correction. Yes. So yeah,
um
what are some things you're seeing and like, yeah, that are help that and then how can we help ourselves and each other?
yeah, I don't know if it's because of the work that I do that I'm experiencing one particular thing, but I've just been seeing a lot of people just getting really real.
Mhm.
So like when the question is asked, how are you? People go for it. Like, I am not doing well, or it is up and down, good
Mhm.
today, horrible yesterday. So
Mhm.
I've been experiencing people who have just been brave to be very honest about themselves and not hide what may be going on with them. Um, so that's been like the main thing that I've been very happy actually to experience. But it does make me think about
Same.
people who don't feel like they're in the space to necessarily be very honest. And actually the other part of that is some friends have been coming to me saying that um and these are people who, because when I was working for a church, there's the whole big church community, and so a lot of those friends are still there and working, and so some of them are coming to me talking about how they're hearing people try to fix people and not saying very helpful things.
Yeah.
And so I've been trying just to talk to them about, okay, here's some ways you can help that person be more helpful. And
Without being like, you're doing it wrong.
which is what's in my head sometimes.
I
But
mean, we have similar personalities in that way. Like I'm a Virgo rising, so I can be pretty righteous about my ways. At least I know it. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
try to be compassionate as well. But yeah,
Hmm.
like, so what are some ways that we can be more helpful with ourselves and with each other during this time?
Yeah. So with ourselves, I think the first step in that is just to be honest and to not, I would say kind of the word protect is the word that's coming to mind. Sometimes we think we're protecting ourselves when we don't talk about the sad stuff. But if you can think about, again, any emotion living inside of you has real estate inside of your body. And if you start to think about the sad stuff as being toxic, like eventually maybe it's sad today, but if it lingers, it will turn into something unhealthy inside of you. So if you can think of it in terms of, how do I process this out of me? How do I acknowledge it so I can work through it, instead of just pretending it doesn't exist? So I think of the first is the awareness that when I have a sad emotion, I should talk about it, and there is a way to process this out of me, as opposed to pretending that it doesn't exist or matter at all. I think that's really, really key for people,
Yeah.
to have that permission, especially if you don't have people in your life who give you the permission to feel what you're feeling and think what you're thinking. It's going to
Yeah.
be really important for you to do that for yourself.
Yeah.
So that to me is the first thing.
Yeah. That really helps. Like kind of how that shows up for me in my life is like, sometimes I don't even know how to name it, right? Like there's just a feeling that I have, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't know that it's
You
sadness
feel
yet, but I
something.
can tell that there's something going on.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing where we have to call ourselves out, right? Where it's like, okay, I can either, go to the fridge and stuff that down. I
Mm-hmm.
can go to Netflix and Hulu and numb it out. I can numb it out with drugs or alcohol. I can call someone to distract myself. But the thing is, like you said, that whatever unnamed feeling is still taking up real estate. So for
Mm-hmm.
me, and here's the thing, it's a muscle to be consciously aware, right? So I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying, like, I consider myself like freaking like benching like thousands of pounds with emotional awareness because I'm just hyper vigilant like that. However, maybe probably too controllingly so, but at least for me, it's like, okay, don't go grab the chocolate first.
Uh-huh.
Like,
Maybe.
just no, and even well, and then grab the chocolate after, right? But like for a second before that, like the other day, actually, I was literally like sitting and like I could feel myself wanting to crawl out of my skin, and I wanted like attention, and I wanted to like talk to someone, and but I was like, before I even do anything, let me just like sit here for a second. And I
Mm-hmm.
sat down like in my chair, and then like my body wanted to like kind of be in this fetal position. And when I got into the fetal position, I was like, I'm sad.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, I'm scared. And I was like, no, I'm
Mm-hmm.
terrified.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm lonely. Like then like the words started coming because
Yeah.
I was like being with the feeling. So it's kind of like that piece of real estate was like, oh, she's paying attention. So now I
Mm-hmm.
will identify myself. And so I was like acknowledging it. And then the emotions started to come. And I just was like in this fetal position, like holding myself, crying. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, this hurts. Like this is
Yeah.
so painful. But I allowed it to take its course, and then it didn't have the real
Mhm.
estate anymore.
Yeah, I'm so glad you used that example, because that was just really good. I'm gonna remember that. I'm gonna use that example in the future for other people. I'm
Yeah,
gonna take that
feel
one.
free.
The reason why I think it's so important is because sadness is, we would call that low hanging fruit. Like we can pick up on sadness, but if
Yeah,
you feel sad and then you try to push that away and not deal with it, you won't ever get to the point is, I actually feel scared and lonely. And those are the emotions that need to be addressed. So if you don't ever move past the
yeah,
awareness, like to get to the point of awareness, you won't get yourself to a place of acknowledging, okay, this is what really needs to be dealt with. And so your example is just so perfect of why it's important to sit in that for a moment and acknowledge, even if it's the low hanging fruit, so it can help you figure out what's underneath it, what's really
yeah,
going on.
absolutely. And I mean, I say that like, oh, I did it, but I want to say, like, to manage expectations, my ability to do that for myself comes from practice, right? And
Mm-hmm. Yep.
it's like, people work out, people are fitness people on the physical end. Like I would say I'm a fitness person on like the mindset, spirituality, emotion. I work with a lot of healers and therapists and whatever's, and they're like, you're like that. I'm really strong emotionally, and so I want to say too, if it takes, that's okay too. Like even for me, sometimes it'll take like a week later, I'll realize, oh shoot, like that thing that person said really pissed me off and hurt my feelings, and that's
Mm-hmm.
why now I want to. It was like a week ago, right? And then it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, now let me address it with the person, and I'm like, hey, this happened between us, and blah blah blah, and I'm feeling like I want to delete your number, but I also love you, so like, can we talk about it? Also requires emotional strength to be with myself in that way. Because, like I
Yeah.
said, when I allowed myself to touch my loneliness and
Mm-hmm.
my fear, that's painful,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
emotional, and scary. And I think we're so used to like numbing that and doing other things to push that away. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the biggest thing why most of us are going crazy in quarantine, because like, nope, like you gotta be with yourself for like a long time, and all
Wherever
that
you
real
go, there
estate is
you are.
like, hello, there's
Mm-hmm.
that breakup from 1996 that you still haven't dealt with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There was that move from when you were 5 years old, and like, or from when you were 10 and you had to change schools and you lost all your friends from elementary school, there's that real estate that still needs to be dealt with. And like, we have all these like losses that are taking up real estate that need to be dealt with.
Yeah, another one of those myths that people believe to kind of work through this is like, well, you just keep yourself really busy. If you just stay really busy, get yourself involved in a lot of activities, a lot of good things for other people, then, you know, then that'll solve everything on its own. But it doesn't.
Does not.
And that the image I like for this is I like to say, take your grief, your loss, your pain, whatever, and imagine that it is an invisible friend. So as long as you're busy, it's invisible. It's following you everywhere you go.
Still gonna be there. You got a whole committee.
And the second you get yourself unbusy, it will come to life and be like, okay, like I was saying, because it's gone nowhere and it has not forgotten anything. It will stay with you until you finally address it. And it doesn't matter if it was yesterday or 10 years ago, it stays until you deal with it.
That actually reminds me of a couple of things. And just to kind of start to wrap up, I want to leave people with like takeaways. That reminds me of a couple of things. I went to this workshop and he said that, I don't remember who it was or what it was for, but he said some funny thing. Cause like, you know, we go to workshops or we listen to a talk like this, or we listen to a podcast, or we watch a show and we feel really good. We have these breakthroughs, and I'm sure people watching are like, this is great, blah, blah, blah. But then when you go home, there are your losses and your negative thoughts that are like, we're still here waiting for you. Like, you look like you've been to one of those things, but alas, you came home and we're still here. So what I have to say about all of that, all of this information, I know was helpful for those of you watching. It's like revolutionary. If it wasn't helpful, I don't know, watch it again or something. But the thing is, just watching this, or if you listen to Jocelyn in my podcast episode, AmeliaFortes.com/podcast, it's on my Instagram. If you want the link, I'll put it in the comments. But we talk about grief more generally as well. And there's a lot of things that we cover in that episode that we didn't cover here. But even if you watch this, even if you listen to this, to actually implement this into your life and to have true transformation, it will require action from you. Like, you can't just like listen to this and be like, oh yeah, cool. Like for me, I read the book, but then I knew, okay, I have to like lie down with myself and be with myself. I have to take those actions and I have to do it consistently and persistently in order for real transformation to happen, right? I'm not going to get swole by doing one push-up. I'm not going to get peach buns by doing one squat. So you're not going to get healed with all your emotional real estate by just by listening to this conversation. So there's a lot of steps you can take. I know the main one that I want to recommend, and then I'd love to hear your recommendations, Jocelyn, but the main one that I have is the Grief Recovery Handbook. It's the book, it's the modality that brought Jocelyn and I together. It's the book, it's the modality that both of us swear by. I think you still swear by it, right? Like, we swear by, we love it. We've gone through it multiple times, and it's something that, like how I said, like, if you break your arm, you don't just be like, oh, time will heal all, or rejoice that you have another arm. Like, it's like, no, you have to do steps, right? So the Grief Recovery Handbook goes way into depth in everything we talked about. And there's actual steps that you go through in order to heal those emotional things. And so I pinned the link to the book in the comments. So that's like my hands down, next step. And also to listen to our podcast episode. It's super cute. What are some next steps or final thoughts that you have for everyone today?
Yeah, that's my first one as well, is to, if you can get your hands on the Grief Recovery Handbook and just read the first 58 pages. I know sometimes sometimes Amazon takes a minute these days. So I believe the handbook is on Audible. I think that's a way to get access to it immediately and just read.
Kindle even, like a ebook?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's on ebook, but check, yeah.
Yeah, we'll check that out. And the first 58 pages will give you the idea of, okay, what this is and what you would be, getting yourself into, and what it will, how it can help you. So I would suggest that first and foremost. And if you don't mind posting too, I have a loss and grief page on my website.
I'll post
So
that.
it explains a lot of,
It's
here's my story.
obettajoe.com, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'll post that right now. Yeah, I'll type whatever you're saying right now. So tell me your things and
So
I'll
that,
post
and
that.
then also the Institute's website has a wealth of information and resources for people. If you're listening to this and you know that you would like to get some help, there's a directory of specialists across the country, so you could look up who, your area. The interesting thing right now is none of us are doing anything in person, so really, the only work is online. So you work with those of us who are doing online work. So you can find people through the Institute's website, which is griefrecoverymethod.com. Those would be the three like next step suggestions that I have.
Nisa says that it is an ebook. So yeah, if you click the
Thank
link
you,
that I've
Lisa.
pinned, it'll take you to Amazon and you should be able to choose whatever format that you want, because I think on Amazon you can choose any of the formats. So I linked the book down below. I also linked Jocelyn's website, and as well as the Grief Recovery Institute's website. Oh yeah, and let me link the podcast episode as well. Let's do that. I think. So we're linking all the things. And Jocelyn, do you have anything coming up that you would like to invite people to, or just to check your website and sign up for your newsletter? Is that the
Yeah,
best
I
way
think
to
that's
find out?
I do a newsletter. I'm trying to do it monthly, and where I just, sometimes I talk about just what's going on right now. Like, last month I talked about how people are talking about we're strong. I'm like, oh no, we're actually grieving. So just topics like that, and then whatever's coming up. I think that's probably during this quarantine, that's probably the best way to reach out and learn what's going on, because the answer is not much right now.
Right, right. Yeah.
So
And of course, anyone watching, like, clearly I love talking about grief. And like I said, it's the focus on the recovery that I'm smiling. It's because I know what's possible. And one thing that we go a lot into depth on the podcast is how when we don't deal with our losses and we don't recover from them, it's cumulatively negative. And that was a game changer for me because, after my mom passed, I kept super busy. And I was like, what? Like, I noticed when I didn't know it in the moment, but after I read the cumulatively negative thing, I was like, yeah, like my capacity for joy and happiness, and I'm a like very joyful, happy person, but my capacity has diminished exponentially. Like, I just would be more irritable and just like overall sad. And like, there was definitely like a deep sadness behind my eyes and just in my whole like way of being. Which is, it happens to us when we don't deal with it.
And if you're not careful, that will become your new normal, and you won't even realize that it has
Exactly,
been.
just like how we heal around like scars and stuff, and
Mhm.
it'll take that way. And then yeah, we'll have the whole invisible friend committee, and then all the feelings taking up real estate, and that's probably why we'll gain weight, because then the feelings need more real estate.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so we'll gain weight, we'll get physical ailments, we'll have a diminished ability for happiness. So it's like, deal with it. And I know that it's a hard topic, and I love talking about it because I know what's possible on the other side. So also feel free to like DM me if you have any questions about the book. But even yeah, like the first 58 pages, game changer, even if you don't do the whole thing, but do the whole thing. And I've been through the process several times. So you can also always like send me a message and ask me about it. And shout out to my partners who I have worked with together on the process. I've also worked through it with some of my friends and some of my clients, and we do it together. Y'all are the real ones. Thank you so much. So Jocelyn, thank you so much for being here. You're amazing.
I love you, girl.
Can't
Thank you
say
for
it
having
enough.
me. I
Yes.
love this. Thank you for doing it.
Oh no, it broke up a little bit. Can you say that last piece again?
I just said thank you for having me, and I love doing this. So just thank you for putting it all together.
Oh yeah, of course. Thank you so much for being a yes. For watching, all the links are below. And again, message me if you have any questions.
Bye.